So, before we get started with the sermon, I realize that as I am obviously a unpracticed liturgist, I've got to say the prayer of illumination. So let's pray. Lord, we have heard your word and received your word this morning. We ask that your word shapes us, that it moves us, that it illuminates us. Holy Spirit, work in our hearts and our minds to change the way we live according to your word, that we may change the world. In your name we pray. And all God's people said, Amen. Last week, we left Joseph in prison, and this week, some 400 odd years later, we meet Moses. One of the challenges of working with the narrative lectionary that we follow is that there are often gaps, huge gaps in the story, because the narrative lectionary tries to tell the entire story of the Bible in chronological order in 9 months. It's kind of a challenge. So I encourage you, as always, to go back and read the rest of the story of Joseph in Genesis, to read the story of Moses up to now in Exodus, because it's a fascinating story. You know, when we left Joseph, he was imprisoned, and eventually he becomes the second most powerful person in all of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. See, Pharaoh had these dreams they didn't understand, and so Joseph was called to interpret those dreams. And those dreams told Joseph and Pharaoh that there was going to be a big drought, a big famine, and Joseph got put in charge of collecting all of the grain that would sustain people through the famine. Well, the famine did not affect only Egypt, but it also affected Joseph's homeland. And so Jacob, also known as Israel, Joseph's father, you got all that? Okay, if you don't, just nod and say you do, then go back and read it later. Jacob sends his sons down to Egypt to procure grain and food for them. When they come to Egypt, they come before Joseph, and Joseph recognizes his brothers. But they don't recognize him. Now, there's a little back and forth in which Joseph may have made it seem like they were thieves. Remember, dysfunctional family. But eventually, he reveals himself to his brothers. There's a lot of hugging and crying, and all is forgiven. And he has them bring his father, Jacob, Israel, and all the rest of their family, all the rest of their people, down to Egypt that they may live there. And they do. They live there and they thrive there. They become a strong people there. So strong that when a Pharaoh comes to power, and the text says this about this Pharaoh did not know Joseph. That when a Pharaoh comes to power who does not know Joseph, this Pharaoh is threatened by the potential power of the Hebrew people. And so this Pharaoh sets very difficult and onerous tasks upon the slaves of Israel, hoping to break them in body and in spirit. But they still persevere. Remember how the Lord was with Joseph? The Lord is with the people. And so Pharaoh then goes to extreme measures and orders that all of the Hebrew midwives are to kill all of the male Hebrew babies that are born. Now the text focuses on 2 Hebrew midwives in particular, Shiphrah and Puah, and they just refuse. They disobey the orders of Pharaoh. Well, Pharaoh starts to see all these little Hebrew boy babies crawling around, running around, whatever Hebrew boy babies do, and thinks something is not right. So Pharaoh calls these 2 midwives in and questions them. And in response to a direct question from Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, these 2 Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, lie. They straight out lie to Pharaoh and say, oh, the Hebrew women are so much stronger than the Egyptian women. Catch that little plug there? Are so much stronger than the Egyptian women that they already give birth by the time we get there, so there's nothing we can do about it. So Pharaoh takes this a step further and issues a decree that anyone, not just the midwives, anyone anyone who sees a Hebrew male baby, they're supposed to throw it into the Nile. Well, there comes along a Hebrew male baby who was born, and after being alive for 3 months, he is literally thrown into the Nile. Only, he is thrown into the Nile while in a floating basket. And so in this basket, this Hebrew baby boy floats down the Nile River to the place where Pharaoh's daughter is bathing. Pharaoh's daughter sees the child in the basket, draws him out of the river, and raises him as her own in the courts of Pharaoh. This child is Moses. Moses, whose name literally means to draw out, to pull out of the water of the Nile. And so it is interesting that it is Moses whose name means to draw out, to lead out. It is Moses who draws out, who leads out the people of Israel through the waters of the Red Sea. So there's a lot that I didn't cover in that little recap between Joseph in prison and the Israelites in the Red Sea today. So again, go back and read those stories. But that's how we got from Joseph 400 years prior to this in prison to the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. You might say that the Israelites here in this text are sort of between a rock and a hard place. You see, they have been freed from slavery. The final of the plagues is the last one that has broken Pharaoh, and Pharaoh sends them on their way. Not only does Pharaoh send them on their way, but they are sent with a great deal of jewelry and gold and silver from Egypt. This is a very violent and brutal time in the life of the people. Remember that last plague was the one where the firstborn son of every house was killed. And this was the one that changed Pharaoh's mind to send them on about their business. And as they're wandering around, as they leave, they don't take a direct route. They take a meandering kind of windabout route. And they don't go directly back to where they're heading. Instead, they wander around in the wilderness around Egypt until they come to a place near the Red Sea. Now, part of the section that I didn't read, primarily because the names are so hard to pronounce, kind of describes the place where the Israelites are camped by the Red Sea. We don't know where those places are today. We're not sure if this is the Red Sea that we know today or if this is a different Red Sea. The actual Hebrew translation means Sea of Reeds. There's been a great deal of archaeological, geological, and theological debate and discussion about where they were actually encamped. Maybe it was near the Red Sea today, maybe it was a different Red Sea, maybe it's near Lake Timsah. No one really knows for sure, and we're not going to spend any time talking about it. All that matters for us is to know that the Israelites were camped next to a huge body of water, big enough that they didn't think there was any getting through it. Big enough to think that with the water there, their only choices are to go these two ways or that way and back. There's no way through the water where they are camped. It is an impossible situation that is in front of them to go that way. Harry Potter? Yeah, I know about him? Sort of orphan British kid. So as a baby, both of his parents are killed, and he is sent to live with his mother's sister and her husband and their child. His aunt and uncle don't like him, to say the least. The first 9-10 years of his life are completely miserable, even though they dote upon his cousin, who is the same age, their son, and who is his age but much larger. Even though they give him everything that he wants, they could care less about Harry. He has to do all the chores. He is often severely punished, often unjustly punished. And even though his cousin has 2 bedrooms, he doesn't even have one. He stays in a little cabinet, a little cupboard, in a little crawl space that's dank, dark, and stuck under the stairs. And oftentimes he is locked in that space. Well, as his 10th birthday approaches, strange things start to happen in Harry's life. Among them are these interesting letters that come for him. He's never got any mail in his life, but his uncle keeps it from him. And more letters come, and the uncle works harder and harder to keep the letters away from Harry until finally one day the uncle takes Harry and the rest of the whole family to some distant, remote cabin way far away from anywhere and anybody. And then in the middle of the night, finally, Harry is found by a giant of a man. His name is Hagrid. And Hagrid informs Harry that he is a wizard and has been invited to a wizarding school. That he can leave his aunts and his uncle and all that torture and literal imprisonment behind. So in that letter that he finally gets to read, he's invited to Hogwarts. And to get to Hogwarts, he has to get on a train. And the train leaves from platform 9 3/4. And so when Harry is leaving behind all of that terrible life and he's heading toward his future, he goes to platform 9 3/4 only to realize there is no platform 9 3/4. There's 9, and there's 10, and where 9 3/4 ought to be, there's just a brick wall. Harry is facing an impossible future when he has left an impossible life behind. Don't worry, it all works out. Harry realizes it's not actually a brick wall. You just have to walk through it and go right through it. It's kind of one of those wizard things. But that's not the point. He was facing an impossible future when he was trying to leave an impossible past behind him. As the Israelites were camped next to that water, knowing there was no way they could get through it, and they see Pharaoh's army coming towards them, they are stuck. There is nowhere to go. They are leaving an impossible past behind them, but they are facing an impossible future. They are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And the reason they are stuck is because something has changed. The text tells us that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh has changed. It's kind of an interesting phrase, isn't it? God hardening Pharaoh's heart. I mean, the image that gives to me is turning the rock to stone. And if the rock turns to stone, why does Pharaoh care what happens to the Israelites? A stone has no feelings whatsoever, and yet somehow, some way, God hardening Pharaoh's heart has changed the way Pharaoh feels about the Israelites, about the Hebrew people. Well, that word that's used there to describe what God does to Pharaoh's heart also means to take hold of, to grasp, to control. God is taking control of Pharaoh's heart. And Pharaoh changes Pharaoh's mind about what to do about the Hebrew people. Remember, they've been wandering around in the wilderness, and people have reported this to Pharaoh, so Pharaoh thinks that they must be lost, that they must be confused, that they must be at their wits' end. That means they will be easy picking. We can pick them up and bring them back into service, into slavery for us here in Egypt. God has set a trap for Pharaoh. Now, remember, I didn't read all the verses in chapter 14. But in some of those verses that weren't read, when it says God hardens Pharaoh's heart, God says the reason for hardening Pharaoh's heart is that God may gain glory over Pharaoh once and for all. If you know some of the story of the Israelites coming out of Egypt, you know there's been sort of a barter going back and forth, Moses says, God says, let the people go. Pharaoh says no. Then something happens and Pharaoh says yes. Then Pharaoh changes Pharaoh's mind and goes back and forth and back and forth. It is as though Pharaoh believes he can always get the upper hand over God. But this is the final, decisive moment when God asserts God's control, power, and authority over Pharaoh. As the army is approaching, God has led them in. The trap is sprung. The waters open up behind the Hebrew people, and there is finally a way forward for them, and they go forward through the waters. And when Pharaoh's army and his heavy chariots try to follow, they get stuck in the mud, and the water crashes down upon them, and the Hebrews are safe on the dry side, and the Egyptians are once and for all defeated. Once and for all, God's power and God's authority have been established over Pharaoh and Pharaoh's army. Something has definitely changed. There is no longer a question about who is in control. God is in control. God is in control. God's glory is greater than Pharaoh. The Israelite people had to make a choice. Remember, they didn't think there was any way through that water. And when Pharaoh's army is coming, they say, couldn't we have just died in Egypt? That would have been a lot better than this. That's what they say to Moses, because they don't think there's any way through. But then when the waters open up, there is a way through. But they didn't have to go. They could have stayed and waited for Pharaoh to scoop them back up and put them in comfortable servitude, if there is such a thing. They still had to go through with water standing on each side, trusting that they were going to make it through. They still had to choose to trust in the faith and the power of God and choose not to believe that Pharaoh was more powerful than God. At the time, in their world, Pharaoh was the most powerful force on earth. And in this moment, when Pharaoh's army is coming and the waters are open in front of them, the most powerful force on earth versus the most powerful force in the cosmos. And they had to decide. So the question that comes from this, for me, and hopefully for all of us, is who, what, or where are the pharaohs in our lives today? Who, what, or where are the forces that convince us that they are the most powerful forces in the world that we need to fear and not trust in God? And that answer is going to be different for all of us. I know that for me, lately, my personal pharaoh that I've been struggling with is a lie that is being told over and over and over again. The line that says, we are more divided now as a people than we ever have been in the history of the world. I cannot believe this. The lie tells us that it is almost impossible to go across the aisle to that person who is completely different from us because we are so divided and we cannot come together. I cannot believe this. I mean, it's easy to believe. I mean, it's easy to believe that I have more in common with people like me and I should be with them and stay away from people who aren't like me. That's really easy to believe because it's comfortable to believe, but that is not what God tells us. God tells us that we are all children of God, made in the image of God. And if we are all made in the image of God, how is it possible that we are more divided now than we have ever been before? We all hold God in common. That's the Pharaoh that I struggle with. The lies of this world that are trying to convince me of something else. So who, what, where are your pharaohs today? And when you struggle with that, remember that God's power has always been and will always be greater